Leung, who you saw in that report, joins us now from Hong Kong. Andrew, good to speak to you this afternoon. So you mentioned that coercion wouldn't work in the South China Sea. What will?
Well, I don't think that the problem is going to be solved anytime soon, because you look at these claims from by China, they date back a long, long time ago. I mean, some of these claims date back even before, well before the Second World War. Before, China was rather weak and was not able to defend its claims or to assert its claims. But now China is the largest, second largest economy in the world, is much more powerful and therefore able to defend these claims. Now, the South China Sea is not just about territorial disputes. It's also a very important passage for China's trade and importation of energy and resources, which underpin the stability of the Communist Party. And also, the South China Sea is, of course, very rich in resources. So all these factors come into play. Now, the relationship between the United States and China is not just about the South China Sea only. Of course, there are other areas where both sides can see eye to eye. For example, over climate change, for example, anti-terrorism, and of course there are areas which both sides see opportunities for cooperation. For example, how to manage North Korea, cybersecurity, and so on. So I think that the relationship is multifaceted, but I think that the heart of it all is what China calls a new great power relationship. When China as a rising power is seen to be threatening the dominance of the existing superpower, the United States.
Absolutely, and they're holding talks, Andrew, but it does seem to me, certainly, that it's almost a done deal. You know, China are building artificial islands down there. Will this escalate further than just a war of words, do you think, between the competing nations over the claims to those islands?
Well, I think that there is no way that China can back down because, as I said, those claims date back a long time ago, and China has never relinquish these claims. And now, of course, China is building islands over what are now rocks. Of course, China's claim is that, well, these are the rocks belong to China, or according to China's claims, and they're just building over them. So I think that, as I said, these are not just rocks. That translates into the security of the South China Sea and what it means to China in terms of important conduit of China's trade, importation of energy, and so on and so forth. So I think that, but the China's neighbors, on the one hand, they depend on China for economic investments and job creation of jobs, so they don't want to antagonize China too much. But on the other hand, they're riding on the U.S. military umbrella to balance against China. So the situation is not just one-sided. But I think that, as I said, the relationship is larger than the South China Sea between China and the United States, because both are great powers, and then the relationship between these two affect not only themselves, but the rest of the world.
Absolutely. Well, just finally then, Andrew, do you see this, how do you see this playing out in the coming years, decades? I imagine that with the rise of China, this will have to be resolved diplomatically, and the other islands, the other countries that have claims on these islands may have to back down.
Well, not directly. I mean, for example, the Philippines is taking the case to the International Court, and there is soon a pronouncement. But of course, according to the rules of these courts, they're not binding. And of course, when it involves territorial disputes, the other rules would come into play. So I think that the situation will carry on like this, and both sides would exert these claims, but of course we're balancing against each other. As I said, China's neighbors value China as the largest trading partner, as a source of investment and creation of jobs. But on the other hand, they're riding on America's military alliances to balance against China. And of course, China and the United States also, they tend to balance one another. I mean, for example, China is creating new financial institutions, for example, the AAIB, and also launching the Belt and Road Initiative. So I think that we are seeing a complicated world, a world is now increasingly dominated by the rivalry between the existing superpower, which is the United States, and the rising power of China. Even though China has said that China doesn't want to replace the leadership role of the United States, but as China is able to defend more of its claims and is able to exert its influence in a more robust manner, that's bound to create a lot of conflicts and repercussions around the world.
Absolutely. Well, Andrew Leung, good to speak to you. Thanks for joining us on TRT World.